Hello everyone. Let's begin with another literary term, poetic justice. It's a term coined by a drama critic, an English critic, of course, and his name was Thomas Rhymer. Thomas, Thomas Rymer. He coined this phrase, this term, in later 17th century. Later 17th century means after 1650. Let me tell you the exact date. What was the date? He wrote a work called The Tragedies of the Last Age Considered. I repeat, The Tragedies of the Last Age Considered, published in 1678. So he coined this phrase in this particular work of him. Okay? So, the definition that I'm going to tell you here is taken from M.H. Abrams' Literary Terms, and one or two lines I took from J. Cudden. Actually, in the both places you will find nearly same things with just different words. So this is a term coined by Thomas Rhymer, an English critic of later 17th century. To signify what? To signify the distribution. So poetic justice talks of distribution. Distribution of what? At the end of a literary work. As prasad is distributed after each and every kathas, so this distribution happens after the ending of literary work. Of what? Here in the place of prasads we have earthly rewards and punishments in proportion to the virtue or vice of the various characters. So if a character is virtuous, he is rewarded. If a character is vicious, he is punished. So individuals' virtue and vices lead them to reward and punishments at the end of the literary work that it talks of. This is all poetic justice. Okay? So it signifies the distribution at the end of a literary work to earthly rewards and punishments. Why earthly? It does not talk of heavenly as we have here in our philosophy. That is how our philosophy is different from that particular term, poetic justice. Earthly rewards. When the person is alive, he gets rewarded according to his virtue, and while being alive he gets punished being vicious. Okay? Rhymer's view was that a poem, generally people laugh at this pronunciation. See, poem is American pronunciation, and correct British pronunciation of this word poem is poem. So p is aspirated poem, not yum. Okay, so poem or poem is easy to pronounce. Rhymer's view was that a poem including dramatic tragedy means he talks of poems or dramatic tragedies, is an ideal realm. See, just try to understand. How interestingly, he talks of earthly rewards and punishment, but what does he say? He says, when we talk of poetry, when we talk of dramatic tragedy, there we create an ideal realm. So an ideal domain is created there. And you know what is ideal? Ideal is different from real. It means it can never happen. Idealism is that thing that is far away from reality. It is ideal because it is not real. Okay? So he says that these literary works are an ideal, it is an ideal realm of its own. So ideal realm, mind it, focus on this phrase, and should be governed by ideal principles. So when ideal realm is there, then ideal principles should be there. And principles of decorum and good manner, decorum and morality. So decorum, what is decorum? Correct behavior that shows respect and good manner. So there should be correct behavior that shows respect and good manner, and there should be morality. So in ideal world, the ideal principle should be there where morality and decorum should be followed. Clear? And not by random way things. And not by a random way of things, way things of often work out in the actual world. So in actual world, in the real world, we see random things happen. The things for which we cannot have logic sometimes, those things also happen. But in the world of idealism, in the ideal world of poetry or tragedy, there should be logic, and on the basis of that logic, that reward and punishment should be given to the individuals. Clear? So it means he says that when you are writing something, when you are creating a work of art, you are creating an ideal world. So in your ideal world, you should create ideal principles. You should talk of ideal morality, decorum. Okay? At some extent, he seems to be correct, but we'll see how his view is not very much supported by the later critics and writers. This formula for resolving plots has fallen into disfavor. This is the language of Kadan. This formula for resolving plots has fallen into disfavor in later centuries. So means in later centuries, the people did not follow his formula of poetic justice. And I'll give you the example for that. No widely influential critics today advocate such a formula without qualifications. Okay? So nowadays, in modern scenario, the critics or the authors, they don't seem to follow this poetic justice. And that's why, what do we find? We find more modern authors showed good characters receiving bad fortune and bad characters being rewarded. So the question arises here, why? On the basis of poetic justice, you can ask why this happens. Should this happen? The answer is, the question should not be with should. The question should be, does it happen or not? So more modern authors showed good characters receiving bad fortune and bad characters being rewarded. They probably, and the spelling is wrong here, kindly correct it, Probably. They probably would argue that their role in society was, what was their role? What they would have thought? Not to provide moral education, but to depict situations closer to reality. So modern authors, they don't consider themselves as propagandists. They don't want to follow didacticism. They don't want to become preachers. They think that whatever they write should be closer to reality. And in reality, what do we find? We find how good people get bad fortunes and how bad people get good fortunes. And that was the reason even the person like Shakespeare, who is writing drama in 16th century, and even then he is considered to be romantic because he does not follow such things. See, the concept of poetic justice with this particular phrase came in 1678 with the coinage of this phrase poetic justice by Rhymer. But this notion was still prevailing in the classicism, in classical literature as well. Okay, so that concept was there. That concept was there without this particular phrase. There might be some other phrases or words regarding this, but this phrase was not there. That doesn't mean that this concept did not occur at that time. In classical literature, you will find several examples of poetic justice. Okay? For example, we talk of Oedipus complex. Oedipus complex is a term, a phrase given by Freud, where you find how a child gets attracted towards his mother. Okay? So the term was given by Freud in later period, but the same depiction we find in whom? D.H. Lawrence's novel Sons and Lovers. So that concept was there. Okay, in the similar manner, the concept was there, the poetic justice concept was there without this term. So in classicism, in classical literature, in Plutarch, you will find, in Dante, you will find, in Horace, you will find this concept of poetic justice. Sophocles, who wrote Oedipus Rex, you will find poetic justice. Okay? And that's why, the staunch classicist Ben Jonson is known for his concept, how fools are being punished. When you read his drama Every Man in His Humor, or when you read The Alchemist, you will find such things. He says that in order to be, in order to have good fortune, you must be, smart enough. You must not, behave foolishly. So logic. But in the real life, sometimes things don't go with logic. And that's why when Shakespeare, in Shakespeare you will find several examples of poetic justice. When you see the fall of Macbeth, when you see fall of this Othello, you see how poetic justice works. But when you see depiction of Cordelia in King Lear, you find how Cordelia is a very good girl by nature. Even then, she gets hanged in his tragedy, Shakespeare's tragedy, that is King Lear. So, there you see how a woman of good character gets bad fortune. And that's why, while reading King Lear, Dr. Johnson reacted in very historical manner and said, what does Shakespeare want to show by this? Here, his depiction does not follow poetic justice. The answer is given by Shakespeare himself in his work when he says, say what you have to, what you want to. Don't say what you ought to. So what you ought to shows morality. What you have to, what you want to shows reality. So that binary, reality and idealism, they go together. They go parallel. Okay? So, come to this term poetic justice. Yes, so I was talking how this particular term poetic justice did not get much favor by later writers and critics. Okay. And yes, while talking of poetic justice, you can correlate it to Indian concept of karma. Mind it, that is not karma, that is karma. K-A-R-M-A, karma. Akarant, so karma. It can be well understood through the concept of karma that in English we call deed or action. Okay? What is karma? The spiritual principle of cause and effect. How cause and effect work. The spiritual principle of cause and effect, where intent and actions of an individual, mind it, intent means intention, intent and actions of an individual, that can be taken as cause. What is the intention? That is the cause. Influence the future of that individual, and that can be effect. So how cause creates effect, how intentions shows result. And due to that, we have the concept that how good people, while getting rebirth, they become happier, they become a person of greater fortune, and how by doing wrong things, doing bad things, how the person gets bad rebirth. Since there is the concept of rebirth in Hinduism, in Sanatana Dharma. Okay, so this karma, this is very much correlated with the poetic justice. What we say through karma, there in literature we find the same thing is being talked as poetic justice. When we talk of two genres, especially, genres are genres, both are correct pronunciations. The genres are fable and parable. Fable and parable. We'll talk about it. What are they? They often contain poetic justice, as a wise and good character is rewarded and any bad character is punished. So in these genres, in parable and fable, you find how poetic justice works there. What is fable? Fable is a short piece of fiction that features animals. So animals are in the center here in fable. So when a story is narrated through animals, when you find animals behaving like humans, they are conversing and doing all sort of things, that is fable. As you find several Champak stories in India. So, a short piece of fiction that features, and that is short, not very long. Short piece of fiction that features animals in the role of the protagonist. So they are the main characters there, and usually illustrates a moral. See, so morality is in the center here. It can also have other inanimate objects. So not only the animals, but other inanimate objects, mythical creatures, or forces of nature can work as main character. So you can say it is a kind of extended personification. Yes, you can say fable. Okay, what is parable? A parable is a short didactic story. Didactic means which preaches, which which talks of morality. A short didactic story meant to teach moral by using human characters in believable situations. So here as the characters we have humans, and they are not in absurd situations, they are in very convincing situations, in a very believable situations. By seeing them we can understand, we can perceive that yes, this can be the case, so that the reader can relate it, so that it is convincing, it must seem convincing. Parable. So parable is a short didactic story meant to teach moral by using human characters in believable situations, so that the reader can relate it. When you talk of parable is actually taken from a Greek word, and that meaning of that Greek word is, so etymological meaning of this word is comparison or analogy. So through comparison or analogy you find here how morals are being given. Parables are found in religious texts such as the Bible and the Quran. While reading English literature you find how different parables that they talk of from Bible. So parable and fable are two main genres in which this poetic justice is very well found out. Let's talk of some literary examples of poetic justice. As we know, Dante wrote the epic, that is the Divine Comedy, and which one part is Inferno. So Dante's Inferno is basically one long treatise on poetic justice. As I told you that how in classical literature you can find several examples. So this Inferno by Dante is one example of that. And as I talked how many Shakespeare's plays also have examples of poetic justice, and even in I found that modern text about Harry Potter, what was written by J.K. Rowling. There you find how Harry Potter is in the favor of love as Dumbledore was, and how Voldemort, the Tom Riddle, how Voldemort was in the favor of death, terror, hatred. So how ultimately he gets punished, how Voldemort gets punished, and how Harry and his friends were rewarded at the end. So that can also be taken as example of poetic justice. You can find several examples of poetic justice even in your life, when you see how a corrupt man is arrested, is being punished, and how a person with good nature is being rewarded. Okay, so See, one more example that I found in Charles Dickens's novel, very famous novel, Oliver Twist. There we have a character called Mr. Bumble, Bumble. He is very cruel by nature, and he is a sadist. You know who sadist is? Sadist takes pleasure in others' pains. So, who enjoys torturing the poor orphans. But there also we find how he meets his poetic justice while being beaten and humiliated by his wife. His wife beats him, humiliates him, and then he get the same, punishment what he was giving to others. And in the later part of the novel we see how they both became poor. So these are some examples of poetic justice. I hope now the idea of poetic justice is very much clear before you. Thank you.